Hi, I'm John O'Hara, here today with Jonathan Cross to talk about his films. John is a writer, actor, and filmmaker, and we're going to find out what he has for us in the future. John, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, John. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So, what's with this? Let's talk about your novel, Cry the Drummer, and the movie that followed.
Cry the Drummer was a pretty interesting venture for me. Primarily, the reason I came to write this story was, and I talked about this before in other interviews and newspaper releases. When I was young, I was coming up, there was a pool hall in my neighborhood, and I would frequent that pool hall, and there was a lot of bookmaking, a lot of gambling, and I got involved in some of that as far as the gambling, pool hustling, which I became pretty good at actually. And what I did is, I thought it would be a great idea to get this pool hustler, this guy's a gambler, and a bookie. Now, I never really became a bookie because actually I was offered a job as a bookie. So when I went home and I told my parents about this, my father said, if you take that job, you're going to get thrown out of the house, you know. So I said, well, I got it pretty good here. I'm not going to take that job. I just respected his wishes, sure. You know. So I thought, but it'd be a great idea if I can get a guy that is a bookie and he's a drummer and fuse these two together and have the character set in South Philadelphia. Now, I got to tell you, I was inspired by the Rocky movies, you know, because he was like a boxer and a loan shark from South Philly. I said, why not a bookie and a drummer from South Philly? But originally, this story was supposed to be a screenplay. Now, I didn't know anything about screenplays or writing them or anything like that. But I wrote this story on 150 pages. It looks like a big scribbled mess. You know, I was able to read it, but nobody else could. But somehow this evolved into a novel. And I started working with English majors up there at Ursinus College. And once we got it written, I couldn't really get anybody interested as far as major motion picture companies to buy the idea for a movie or to get a publisher to publish it. Okay. So I self-published the book, which came out in 1995. Which is still available today in some places. It's available on Amazon, or you can buy it in some of the local bookstores. A lot of people still talk about it, you know. But then when I couldn't get a movie deal, even after the book was published, I said, you know what? I want to shoot a movie myself. I had no knowledge of making movies, though. But I was fortunate enough to start talking to some good filmmakers, a lot of technical, qualified people. And then I went out and bought myself a camera. I did some studying up on my own. I had a gentleman from Pakistan and another guy from Philly who pretty much stuck with me through the whole film while we were making it. And then in between, we were getting various crew people here and there helping us. It took a long time to make the movie, but we got it done, and it was really a nice cinematic piece. I mean, it was just a great film for my first movie. A lot of people loved it, you know. So I was really happy with it, you know. But the whole thing, I mean, about that stems from my beginnings of where I was, and that's how I fused these things and being inspired by the Rocky movies, you know. So that's pretty much it with Cry the Drummer. And right now it's available at Amazon for download and download rental.
Okay. So your next film was Goodbye, Charlie Damien. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, Charlie Damien is a film. It's kind of hard to explain how I came up with this whole concept, but I think it's something that was with me personally. Some losses that I suffered in my life. A guy wanting to run away from his troubles and then coming back and seeing that the same troubles are still there again, so to speak. And it's like this guy, what I did is I had him in Las Vegas. I mean, this is all off screen. He tells the story about what happened in Vegas later on when he gets involved with this troubled actress who he probably should have never got involved with. But he comes back from Las Vegas where he was a bass player in a band.
Okay.
He went back to some of his old habits. He went back to playing music. He went back to drugs, drinking, womanizing.
Right.
He got so bad that the band fired him. And he was in debt to a loan shark out there. I'm sorry, a loan shark for $10,000. And he comes back to his hometown, but he forgot about that 10 grand. So he comes back to his hometown. He gets involved with this girl. It's a troubled actress, like I said. She can't seem to land a job in the Philadelphia circuit.
Right.
And what happens is later on, this loan shark sends 2 guys to his hometown to collect this money. And they want interest, you know.
They're interested in the money.
So, yeah, so now, you know, he's going around scrambling for money, figuring, I got to get this money together because these guys are going to bust me up now, you know. Plus, he's got this girl now that he met in a donut shop. She works part-time in a donut shop. They put up with her pretty much so she can go on these auditions all the time to Philly.
Right.
The poor girl just can't seem to land a role. She's very troubled. He ends up getting involved with her. He gets the 10 grand paid to his loan shark. He pays these guys. But then it ends up in a tragic ending because of this girl is so troubled, something tragic happens.
Okay.
And him, on the other hand, just before he's ready to literally commit suicide, because he's had it now, obviously, from what I'm telling you, you can understand that.
Yeah.
He uses his common sense and he thinks, you know what, I'm going back to my church, you know, where him and his wife were involved in a good church. They were living a good Christian life, and he just before this guy's ready to take himself out, he makes that decision. And he goes back to the church, you know. And he has one last vision of the girl. It's pretty interesting how we did this in the movie.
Okay.
But it's one of the movies where there's a tragic ending, but yet there's a new beginning. You know, a lot of good stuff going on in the film, though. I was really happy working in this film because the woman that played the lead role, Molly Ray, she did a fantastic job, and her and I really hit it off well. I think we both connected at a time when we both needed that kind of a project in our lives. I just felt that connection. So we were able to, and that made, we made it all, more wanting to shoot the film and continue on with it.
Well, I can certainly see your passion for what you do. And as you mentioned, both the films are available on Amazon.com. Cry of the Drummer is available on DVD at...
CD Baby.
Oh, okay, CD Baby.
Yeah, they're both available on Amazon for download.
Now, your next 2 films were shorts. Calling Augie and Mickey Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Why 2 shorts after going with the full lengths?
That's a good question. What had happened was, I think, during and after shooting Charlie Damien, you know, it was getting to be, I was starting to feel a little bit exhausted because in Charlie Damien, we very seldom had the crew people we needed. If there was any, it was usually 1, sometimes maybe 2, and there were scenes where I had no crew help. Actors were actually helping me.
They were doing crew.
And they were all working on a deferred pay basis, and they were helping me out. You know, these are people that are going about all the time for auditions, you know, and want to get in films, but they were more than helpful, you know, to me. So I didn't have another screenplay written, and I wanted some time off, and I said, I don't feel like writing another screenplay. I says, but I want to shoot something, just to shoot. So I thought, well, what about an improvisational type story? And I started thinking of these ideas about this guy named Augie. And actually, that was my nickname when I was young. So that's really where I got the name from. But with that and the fascination I had with the mob, which I think most people have, you know, I did a lot of reading up on the mob and all that. I've never been part of it or anything like that, but yeah. I thought if I can fuse, get this guy Augie and the mob and have him as an enforcer for the mob, not a made man now,
Okay.
just somebody they could look to say, hey, look, Joe Schmo owes us some money. You got to go and collect from this guy. So call Augie. He's the guy that'll take care of it. And Augie's the kind of guy who has a lot of common sense. He's an intelligent guy. He has a way of influencing people or moving them, to say, hey, you got to pay up. You got to take, or your family's going to get hurt. Or you're going to get hurt. What good is that to you? He had a way of doing that, but yet he was very firm and tough when he had to be. I mean, in the movie, he really lashes out at a couple guys. I mean, and there's one scene shot at a cemetery in the movie where you really wonder if he's going to have this guy shot, because he has there's about 4 guys with him, and they literally take him down an embankment to shoot the guy. And then the guy wakes up. He says, I better tell him the truth.
That must have been a fun shoot.
Yeah, so you wonder, is Augie really that kind of guy? And you're almost thinking, you know what, he is. He is a killer. He'll have his guy shot, So it was it's a 37-minute film, which will be available on Amazon too, by the way. Great short film. A lot of people loved it. In fact, I've written a full-length screenplay for that movie. I liked it so much that I wrote the screenplay, and I said, sometime in the future,
Take it further.
I got to take this further, and we can do everything we want that's in that script.
That's good.
So that's my first short film.
Yeah. Mickey Boy.
Mickey Boy, once again, no screenplay. I said, but I want to shoot another feature.
Okay.
But I tried to attempt to shoot this feature on an improv basis. And I thought, you know what, I don't know if this is going to work, because some of the people that I had in the movie really couldn't commit to a time frame and shooting that long a period of time on an improv basis. There was a lot involved in the movie, So I said, it's just not going to work, but I'll make a short. So we made a 30-minute film, which is good. It worked out really well. It's basically about a guy that was a filmmaker and a drug dealer. Was sent to prison for 2 years, comes back home. He made this one movie, and it's been sitting on a shelf, and a lot of people are just saying, hey, why don't you do something with this movie? Because you don't want to go back to where you were. Because, police were watching him and everything, see if he's going to make a mistake again. And so it has a good ending to it. It definitely has a good ending. He does move along with this whole idea, the movie and all. But within the whole context of this thing, actually recently, I've just finished up a screenplay for Mickey Boy. I like that movie so much. I've written a full-length screenplay for it. And with this time around, it was really good because my screenwriting has improved. So with Mickey Boy, I'm even more pleased with the screenplay. So maybe sometime in the future, once again, along with Calling Augie, these will be 2 movies that will be good to go along with the agenda of films that I have planned for the future.
Great.
And as you mentioned, Calling Augie will soon be available on Amazon.
That'll soon be available
Okay.
on Amazon for download and download rental. Yeah.
All right. And from there, it looks like you went back to more of a feature film with the Bookie.
Yeah, the Bookie was a really interesting film for me. It's probably my best film. Cinematically, it was shot really well. It's a great story. And I think it's something that was really in my heart because it's something I've been wanting to write for a long time about a Bookie. And the reason for that is, when we go back to Cry the Drummer, I think I had mentioned that I was offered a job as a Bookie when I was very young, and my father didn't want me to take that job. So I thought, well, what if I would have taken that job, and I would have been a Bookie? So I got this character who's now 55 years old that has been a Bookie for 35 years. He's bought into legitimate business, real estate. He owns some homes. He has a crew of guys working under him. He's doing real well, you know. But what happens is there's a tragedy where a drug dealer shoots a prostitute, or has her shot by a couple of his people. And it just so happens that this young girl, who is an aspiring recording artist, that the main character, this guy Louis, he is a mentor for her.
Okay.
Because her father had left when she was young. She is with this prostitute, just walking along the streets with her, because everybody knew each other. Everybody was friends. They respected her, even though what she did. But this young kid is shot also. So she's killed. So at this point in the Bookie's life, which his name is Louis Montleone, by the way, he's come to a crossroads now. He's really broken by this. Plus his girlfriend, who is a school teacher, she's going to Florida. She tried to get him to go to Florida with her because she wanted him to get out of that business, move to Florida. She goes to Florida. So he misses her. This kid gets shot. So he decides to disband from everything in his area, you know, the bookmaking, any other legitimate things that he owns or whatever, and he decides to do something he'd been wanting to do for a long time. He's going to go to Florida and open up an Italian restaurant. And it just so happens that his girlfriend had come back to the area to see a friend. She meets up with him, and he tells her that he got out of the business. They hook up again, and he heads back to Florida with her. So it's a great story because, you know, this guy was involved a long time in illegal business, and you could see the transition as he was getting older. You could think about it. He was starting to go into the legitimate stuff. He wanted to open up a restaurant. There was already something there, but unfortunately it took that tragedy and somebody to get out of his life, his girlfriend leaving him, to really wake him up, and then he makes the move. So it's a happy ending, but like a lot of stories, this tragedy, it's good. It's just a good movie to watch. You know, it's just a lot of fun. I like the film a lot.
You mentioned something about a 6-minute phone conversation. Was that part of that making, or was that when you go into your next film, which is The Day of Salvation?
Day of Salvation is pretty much as we're doing this interview is done. I mean, right now we're in what we call the nitpicking stages. We got to screen it a few more times just to tweak some things. I've seen the movie already about 20 times.
Okay.
Tell
us about it.
It's about a guy that's 58 years old who was a drummer.
Okay.
20 years prior, he had a nervous breakdown because the band that he was in had just gotten a record deal. The band wanted to celebrate. They went out to a local bar that they played at a lot. Too much to drink. 3 of the members carpooled it down. On the way home, they were killed. He couldn't handle this. He ended up having the breakdown. His wife leaves him, and he's walking the streets of his hometown, and where the movie was shot, in Norristown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And he gets to know a lot of the neighborhood people. I mean, there's a lot of bad things going on in this neighborhood. And he adapts to it. But this movie in itself is about, you know, if you have faith, things will happen. And miracles happen. Because this guy literally gets a miracle in his life. The remaining band member who is dying of cancer, who actually dies in the film, this guy named Jimmy, he ends up giving the tapes to this guy, Michael Leonetti, who was the main character, through his wife. His wife actually gave them to Michael after he died.
Okay.
She said, he wants you to have these. And then he gets a call from a record company saying that they found a 3-song demo that's been laying in their A&R department for 20 years.
Of the same band.
Same band. So he gets them demos from the band, and they find this, and it happens simultaneously. And suddenly, things start to turn around in this guy's life. His wife comes back to town. She wants to get back together with him after 20 years. So, you know, like I said, this is a miracle. For some reason, this all happened, you know. But I think he foreseen it coming, because he was doing a lot of searching and he's seen signs like, you know, of religious things. He walked into a church one day unexpectedly with this congregation, this pastor speaking. So, you know, he was searching. He was searching for a way out indirectly.
Right.
And then this miracle just happens, you know.
And that really is interesting, the way a miracle comes into someone's life. That always is something that is real, or can be real, we hope. So let's get back to this 6-minute phone conversation and where that fits in.
What happened was we shot the film and we had we had an hour and 25 minutes worth of film. But I wanted the film to be like like a feature, like hour and a half or more. And I thought, well, now what am I going to do now? You know, and we shot this film primarily on improvisation, and a lot of stuff was being written as we were going along. I was writing scenes. There really was no script. So I had nothing to go to and say, what can we shoot now to fill this void?
Right.
And I didn't want to go around scrounging up actors again and new locations, because the movie was done, you know. But I said to the editor, I said, we have to have more time, you know. So I thought of this idea of him getting a phone call from the ex-manager of that band that was disbanded because of the guys that died.
Right.
The manager's name was Sharkman. Interesting film, you know, interesting name for a manager, because they're pretty much sharks,
Yeah.
the managers.
You don't have to make it up.
Right. But what I did is, to open this scene, I did something pretty interesting. I used my own house. And my kitchen looks like, you know, an apartment setting. It's a small kitchen. The outside of the house, there's a cat that hangs out in the yard. Now, I started feeding this cat. You know how that works when you start feeding animals. You know, they're going to keep coming around, especially cats. Some people think I'm crazy. I say, you know what, I have this cat that I trained a little bit. He'll jump up on the fence. I'll tell it to turn around and he'll walk down the fence, and then I'll go down. I'll suck him down this way, and it turns around at my command. I mean, you know.
You get a new career.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you work with animals a little bit, you can train them.
Yeah.
Not just dogs, you know.
Sure.
So I said, this would be interesting to get this cat to open up the scene. So I had the cat come down the fence, and then he jumps off the fence on the steps and walks out of the shot. The back of my house is in fairly bad shape, so, you know, I was planning to have it fixed because I want to sell this house. I want it to look good. I said, but I'm going to wait till I have anybody come down. I want to shoot this first, because it looks like the outside of an old apartment building.
What it's supposed to, yeah.
So we do that, and then we go inside. The character's about ready to pour a cup of coffee, and he gets this call from this guy, Sharkman, because he found out about the record deal. The conversation goes on for 6 minutes, but you never see Sharkman. It's the same as, you know, you getting a phone call saying, John, excuse me, you go get the call, you're on it for 6 minutes, and I'm sitting here like an audience, and I'm watching you and listening. But the thing of it is that will hold the audience's attention is it's an interesting call, because he tells a lot of stuff that wasn't told in the movie.
Okay.
You know,
So recap.
when's the band going to get together for the tour? And he talks about, you know, he's got to go to New York. The record company's setting up a manager for him. He's going to go to New York to audition people for the band. He's getting some things told to him from Sharkman that he mentions, because Sharkman became a minister, and he lives in Florida now. You know,
Okay.
he also goes in deep about how he blamed himself at times for the guys getting killed, because they got drunk. He thought he should have said to them, "Stay at my house tonight. Don't drive home." So a lot of emotion comes out of this phone call. That's what makes it attractive, you know. So it worked, and we filled that void. So now we got the movie a little over an hour and a half.
Makes it the feature.
So it's a long story about that thing, and it's a long scene to watch for me because of the amount of times I've seen the movie. But when you watch it as an audience, it's all going to make sense.
Sounds like it ties everything together a little bit.
Yeah. So, Day of Salvation, we'll have a premiere in March of this year. We'll premiere it at a theater, and then from there we'll see where we go with it, whether it's a festival or getting a big company involved. I don't know. We're going to see, you know,
Well,
what we do with it.
So John, tell us a little bit about your next film then.
Well, the next film I have in mind is a boxing movie. And the reason for that is it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time as well because, you know, my father was a professional fighter until he was 22 years old.
Okay.
He had a makeshift gym at the garage at the house. He taught a lot of neighborhood kids how to box. And I was around all this stuff all the time. You know, me personally, I'm not a boxer. I'm not a tough guy or nothing. But I learned a lot about the game. And I learned a lot from my father because, you know, I had a lot of respect for him. He was a good boxing trainer, and he actually was a good boxer. I seen him fight a couple times, actually, when he got out of the pros.
Right.
So I always wanted to do something along the lines of that. So what we're doing now is we're in the works. We're planning to shoot a boxing movie in East Norton, Pennsylvania. I think that's where we're at now, actually.
Right there. Yep.
We've gotten
Great.
a lot of help from the township before, because we shot some scenes here from my other movies. And I think it'll be a great place to shoot. There's a lot of business around here. I think it'll bring, you know, help bring some revenue to the town as well, and the businesses will be happy as well as the township. And if things go well, we'll start shooting it probably in May of this year. I'm not going to say too much about the film, but I'm pretty sure in this one here I'm going to be a boxing trainer.
Sounds good.
I will say that. Right now I'm scouting out some good young prospects to play a boxer in the film for what I think is a pretty interesting story.
It does sound like a good story.
Mhm.
Write and do what you know, as they say. So that's
Pretty much.
what you do.
Yeah, I do that as much as I can.
that's good.
Unless some kind of crazy idea comes into my head for a science fiction film.
Ah.
But yeah. So that'll be my next thing to look into.
And that is another thing to look forward to from Jonathan Cross. And once again, I'm John O'Hara. John, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Look forward
man.
to seeing you
Always good
again.
to see a fellow musician.
Yes, it is.